First on film and entertainment, a very, very good morning to all of you. And we have got a cavalcade of champions today. Jackie Hammerton, very good morning. You've been away. You're back again. It's nice to have you on board.
Thank you, Alex.
Now, first things first, you went far afield. Did you enjoy yourself? Because you went to exotic locales.
I did. I went way off the grid. I went to South America and did a very, very big 5 weeks. I was away for 6 weeks around South America, Chile, Argentina, Peru, Brazil, and around the Galapagos, Ecuador. So it was really
impressive. So
adventurous.
Attacked by tarantulas, were you?
I did meet some tarantulas, and they were very polite. They didn't attack me. I did meet some hammerhead sharks out in the snorkeling waters, and all sorts of other critters, and had a lot of fun.
Oh, that's terrific. Nice to have you there, as mentioned. Gregory King, exotic or otherwise, what do you reckon, eh?
Very adventurous, I know that, but that's about it.
That's about, well, hang on. You're heading, where are you heading later this year? Where are you going back to Sydney or something, are you?
I'm going to Paris.
Paris? My golly. Peter Krause, we're being left in the dark here. You're going to go to darkened cinemas. That's about it, isn't it?
That's correct. That's as much journey as I'll take.
Well, look, we've got a very, very special guest first up, a writer extraordinaire who has done a lot of work, and I've got to say I've seen quite a bit of it and have been mighty impressed. Not just saying that, but genuinely so. He has got a new play out, and I'm holding his name at abeyance for the time being. The play is by Wondrous Theatre, and it's called Rootless Cosmopolitans, on at Chapel Off Chapel, one of my favourite venues. And look, obviously we are talking on J-Air, so highly appropriate, because being identifiable as Jewish today is, well, it's more fraught than at any time since the Holocaust. And I can't speak for the rest of you, but in my case, my parents came to Australia to get freedom that they didn't get in Europe. And unfortunately, many, many people, 6 million Jews and many others' lives were lost in the Holocaust. What's happened since October 7 and the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel is despicable. I mean, the growing tide of anti-Semitism has been relentless. And that's why this work is most important. Ron Elisha is the playwright I'm speaking of. It's most thought-provoking, Rootless Cosmopolitans. Could not be any more relevant or timely. Many words are spoken within the play, but the heart of which is really blatant discrimination. So first 20 minutes, well, it's pretty lighthearted, explores the relationship between a self-assured Jewish son who happened to marry out and his Jewish mama. But then the tide turns, and that's where everything really takes off. So, Ron, thanks so much for joining me. I haven't spoilt too much of the plot at this stage. When and why did you write this play?
Well, I originally wrote it a couple of years ago when I read some statistics about anti-Semitism. And this, of course, was way before October 7, which surprised me. And it was a response to that. And then, of course, once October 7 happened, the entire landscape changed, and the beast that we refer to as anti-Semitism had also transformed. So I couldn't ignore that. I couldn't make believe it hadn't happened. So I had to do a certain amount of rejigging. But I didn't want to make it a play about the war per se, because that's a whole subject on its own and a very complex one, and one that's very difficult, I think, to approach in a play without sounding incredibly didactic. It's sort of he said, she said sort of thing. I have also written some plays on the subject, but I doubt they'll ever get onto the stage. But this is one that is mainly about the specific nature of anti-Semitism and why it's not quite the same as, for example, racism of other kinds. There is a difference.
Well, perhaps you can outline what the difference is. Please, go for it.
Well, it's because it's not quite just a religion. It's not quite just a race. We don't fit into any easy category, and because we're seen, people on the right, for example, the extreme right, who have been traditionally anti-Semitic, will not see us as white. They'll see us as non-white, somewhat inferior. But people on the extreme left, who this is the sort of, if you like, the new anti-Semitism, would see us as the oppressors, would see us as part of the sort of white colonialistic oppressive class, wielding all the power. So it's this odd thing where you're seen as being inferior, but you're also seen as wielding power, and therefore you're not only the subject of contempt, but also of fear. And it's a weird position to be in because you can't you can't please everybody.
In terms of rewriting, how much of the play was rewritten after or since October 7, and how long did that take?
Oh, look, it didn't take a long time. I write fairly quickly. It was really mainly, I don't want to give away too much. There's a plot point where his life changes. What's made that happen is in real time the news of that October 7 attack, and that leads him to do certain things that ultimately lead to quite significant consequences. So it's really making that the trigger for what happens to him, whereas a trigger used to be something less well defined.
Now, in terms of who you'd like to actually go along and see a play, rather than saying everybody, is there a specific target audience here? Is this meant to be only a play without sort of, well, I don't see it that way, of course, but do you see this as being entertainment as well as education? What would you say?
I always try and make every play, it doesn't matter how serious the subject, and this is a serious subject, I always try and inject humour, not just for the sake of humour, but that's because it's the nature of life. Even in the most extreme circumstances, people can't help but laugh. And so it does make it a lot easier. Sometimes certain subjects are so intense and so confronting that you need something to leaven it a bit. So, yes, I don't think there's any excuse for sort of boring your audience to tears. I think you've got to give them something to hang on to that means that the evening progresses without them looking at their watch and wriggling in their seats. So, yes, entertainment is important, but it should be the sort of entertainment that when you laugh, you suddenly think, oh, hang on, should I be laughing at that? Shouldn't I be laughing? What does it actually mean? So that you go out with something to talk about. And from what I've heard, I think people are going out of this play with plenty to talk about.
Well, I found Rootless Cosmopolitans certainly engaging, quite disturbing. I mean, obviously that's part of the message that needs to come through here, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
And in terms of Australia as you see it today, I mean, I don't know, have you lived here your entire life?
Yeah, I was born in Israel, but I came out when I was 18 months old, so virtually, yes.
Virtually your entire life. I've never seen it like it is today, and it's incredibly concerning in terms of not just now, but what's going to happen in years to come in the wake of October 7. How do you read the political situation here?
Yeah, it's a massive, massive change. We always used to talk about, the possibility of another Holocaust and that sort of thing. And it was always a sort of a theoretical discussion, but without being sort of a panic merchant or alarmist, when I was at the rally on Sunday in Melbourne, which was a rally held against anti-Semitism, it wasn't to do with the war. It was basically against anti-Semitism, a very kumbaya type of gathering. And there were people just up the road, separated by two lines of police, who were abusing and screaming and engaged in acts of violence, who were protesting against the rally, which was against anti-Semitism. Now, how do you justify that, really? It's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary.
So where's the education factor here missing? Because it's almost like between the years, people just don't seem to understand. And for example, chants of From the River to the Sea, people don't understand even what they're chanting when they're supposedly against Israel, they're against Jews. There seems to be a total lack of understanding, but there's a lot of conviction.
There is a tremendous amount of ignorance, but some of it has to be willful ignorance. You can't tell me that professors at a university, some of them, who professors in things like history, etc., that they don't know the actual history. You can't tell me that. It would have to be a willful ignorance, a willful desire to ignore certain basic known facts, and I mean facts. And this is the problem. We're in these bubbles where there are no facts anymore. There's no truth anymore. I don't know that education is the key, unfortunately. I mean, the worst Holocaust in history happened in Germany, which was a highly educated country at the time. And I have a friend who works for Courage to Care, and they go to schools talking about the Holocaust. And she's decided at the end of all this, and she's put a tremendous amount of work and effort into it, that it seems to be a waste of time, which is a terrible thing to have to say.
So what, she's going to pull the plug?
Well, I don't think she'll pull the plug. I think she's still out there trying, but she's not feeling hopeful. She's not feeling optimistic about the effects
so how do we address this as a very real issue that's not just going to affect us potentially, but future generations? And, it changes the face of the society that's meant to be carefree.
There are no easy answers. I think the internet has a tremendous amount to answer for, and I think we need to become a lot more critical about how we use it or misuse it. And I think the atmosphere out there is absolutely toxic. I mean, we were unable, for example, with this play, we were unable to get any kind of mainstream coverage at all. And the word that came back unofficially, not through official channels, was, this is too hot to handle. And why is it too hot to handle? Because people have been intimidated by things such as doxing and cancellation and this sort of massive online onslaughts with terrible death threats and all sorts of things. It's a very toxic, intimidatory environment out there, and I think the internet's got a lot to answer for. We really do need to be a lot more active in combating the algorithm.
We do indeed. Look, Anton Berezin is very, very strong in this one. He is the central focus, if you like, and he envisages his mother, who's no longer with us, within this play as being, if you like, a voice of conscience for him. That was obviously a deliberate ploy on your part. Very strong indeed. What can you say about his character in this play?
Well, I've purposely made him, I don't think he's any worse than anyone else, but he's a flawed character. He's got his pluses, he's got his minuses. I didn't want to paint a picture that, all the Jews out there are saints, but you shouldn't need to be. You should be able to be flawed. You should be able to make mistakes and say the wrong thing and not be pilloried and not be discriminated against.
Absolutely. Well, I should finish by asking you the term Rootless Cosmopolitans. Let's go into that. It's a play that people should see. I've really got to emphasise that, and perhaps once we've spoken with you, I'll tell people a little bit more about it. But overall, tell us about the name and where that came about, or how that came about.
It was coined in the 1800s by a literary critic in Russia who was referring to people generally whom he felt were not, I suppose you could call it Russian enough, not patriotic enough. And it did, to a degree, refer at that time to Jews, but then it was taken up with great glee by Stalin, who specifically used it in relation to Jews. And it was a kind of code, if you like, for Jews, so that you couldn't be necessarily accused of anti-Semitism, but everybody knew what you were talking about. But it's been used much more recently than that. It was used by, his name's gone out of my head now, but particular colonel in the US Army who was addressing the GOP in the US and made reference to the Rootless Cosmopolitans, and everyone knew exactly what he was talking about. So it hasn't lost its currency.
No, it certainly hasn't. And look, there's a lot of self-serving in this particular play. There are people sort of feathering their own nests left, right and centre. And there is a great deal of entertainment value, believe it or not, in what we've talked about, even though the subject matter isn't entertaining. So I think you've done exactly what you suggested earlier in this interview that you were going to do, so that it's not just dark, dark, dark. And there are certainly quite a number of humorous moments. And probably the most prominent of those is the relationship between mother and son, correct?
Yeah, it's a bit of a double act. And I did make her intentionally not your stereotypical, Jewish mama, because I didn't want that. I didn't want it to be.
There's a lot of Jewish mama in her. I reckon I can recognise my mother in her as well.
Well, there is, but it comes more out of what she actually says rather than who she is, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
It's
she's no fool, that's for sure.
No, and it's not. I didn't want to do a sort of a Neil Simon. It's not that kind of.
No, it's not. Babs Macmillan is the woman the actor who plays the character of Frida, which is the mother, and Ira is the Anton Berezin character in Rootless Cosmopolitans. Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and I wish you well, not just with Rootless Cosmopolitans, but with future work. And I know you're prolific. You seem to have this capacity to be able to turn out a lot of material, not just here, but overseas. And just a brief plug, this is going to continue until when? When does Rootless Cosmopolitans go on till at Chapel Off Chapel?
It's got one more week, so it ends 2nd of June, so you need to get in quickly.
Exactly, and I think you're bringing something to us that was on overseas as well. What is that, next year?
Yes, hopefully. Anne Being Frank is the play, and it's a reimagining of the Anne Frank story from a very different perspective. And it won a couple of awards for the Broadway World Awards. It was an off-Broadway production for Best Production, Best Solo Performance, and runner-up for Best New Play. So.
The performers, though, will be new performers here in Australia, or will you bring them?
It's a one-woman show. Alex Fishman is the actor, and she's originally Australian. She lives in New York now, and she'll be bringing it out to Sydney and Melbourne, hopefully. And
do we know the venue yet, or time, or not yet?
Not yet. No, early days yet, but we'll get there.
Terrific. Well, I'll keep in touch with you and inform our listeners about when that is on. But for the time being, another week to see Rootless Cosmopolitans at Chapel Off Chapel. Ron Elisha, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, folks, there you go. You've got the offering. You've got it from the writer's mouth and mine as well as a strong recommendation. And look, it's one of those things that in terms of anti-Semitism, there isn't one answer, but it's an ongoing issue. Students are being hounded, and a number of them only in the past week have said that they're going to leave the University of Melbourne because of the troubles that are there. I mean, that's deeply disturbing, Peter, isn't it? Shocking.
It is, very much so.
Yeah. Look, I'd like to think that how do you educate those that don't want to be educated? That's the difficulty here. And I mean, whatever you think the solution is, killing one another, discriminating against one another, be it anti-Semitism or any other form of discrimination, is not the answer. And as a society, I reckon we're going backwards rather than forwards, which is very, very it's not something that I want to bring our kids into, and yet they're already here. Let's move on First on Film and Entertainment to a few other things. And I suppose talking about war, it's war of another side or another type, and it's more cartoon type violence. But the big movie of the past week has been Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. And gee whiz, I mean, 45 years of Mad Max. It's hard to believe that when this was formulated as a concept, we'd be thinking that George Miller is still turning it out. And I tell you what, they must have spent a decent amount of money on this movie. Peter, do you know these things? Do you know how much the film itself cost to make?
I think it's around $80 million or thereabouts.
Really? I thought it was more than that. Okay. Greg or Jackie, any insight?
I thought it was closer to $200 million.
Yeah. Again, numbers are bandied about, but I certainly think it's more than the $100 million mark. But
the most expensive film made in Australia.
Yes. Yeah. And it's brilliantly shot. The thing that I've got to say at the outset, I think it looks, you can see where they've spent the money. It looks amazing. It sounds incredible. The plot is just a revenge plot. We get that all the time. And actually the words are kept to a minimum, but the sounds are certainly not kept to a minimum, nor is the visuals, which are quite striking. So talking about striking, I don't think I've ever seen an actor such as Anya Taylor Joy. She stands out head and shoulders because she's so different in terms of look generally, right? In terms of her acting ability, she's phenomenal. But, whether it be on a catwalk in terms of promoting wares, or whether it be in a movie, that angular face of hers, very, very beautiful woman, really is quite striking. But an astounding actress, really astounding. So let's talk a little bit about what is a strident revenge thriller, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. 15-year odyssey of a young girl snatched who is basically going to stop at nothing to find her way home. And in that time, she starts out as a feisty 10-year-old and she becomes a most resourceful and industrious young woman. So Anya Taylor Joy is Furiosa, stolen from what's known as the green place of many mothers. And she falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by a warlord called Dementus. And that's the role that Chris Hemsworth plays in Furiosa. They sweep through what's called the wasteland and come across the Citadel, which is presided over by a character called the Immortal Joe, role filled by Lockie Hume. And you've got the two of them, you've got the Immortal Joe and Dementus fighting one another, a couple of tyrants. They're both looking for total domination. And Furiosa's survival's on the line here. She undertakes many, many trials that test her resilience. And part of the reason for this is that her mother has been taken and killed. So that's as much as I want to sort of say about the script. In terms of, going back to the well, it was written by George Miller as well as directed. A fellow writer is Nick Lathouris, who did Mad Max Fury Road, which is the previous movie in the franchise. And I really gorged myself on the visuals, the sound, the costuming, the makeup spectacle that are the defining characteristics of this prequel to Fury Road. As I said, looks and sounds magnificent. And I reckon you've got to see this film. You really do have to see this film on the biggest screen possible. Now, if you can afford to go to IMAX, please see it at IMAX. It is really, really potent. Love the stunt work, the creation of the cobbled together vehicles, and we're talking about cars and bikes and trucks, and I think there's an aerial as well that abound in the movie, and they sort of crash and bash into each other. And the stark desert landscape as well, endless sand, rocky outcrops, perfect setting to a world that's in chaos. I mean, much of it was shot around Broken Hill. So it's ferocious, it's unrelenting, it lays bare the brutality of the wasteland that is front and centre in the movie. And there's plenty of action over nearly 2.5 hours. So lots of chases and combat and inevitable thrills and spills. I really did. I thought Anya Taylor Joy was really powerful in the lead. Lots of gusto, lots of verve, doesn't take a backward step. Really impressive. She carries herself with this steely-eyed determination and ferocity of spirit. Really like the younger iteration of Furiosa too. Ayla Brown is that particular actor and does a very fine job too, and makes her presence felt. I thought that Chris Hemsworth was full of bluster. I mean, he's a blowhard in his portrayal of Furiosa's nemesis. He doesn't give a tinker's cuss about anyone other than himself. Of course, he's got a history too because he lost his family, and maybe that's made him who he is. But he's like a cartoon-like villain and strongman in Furiosa. Thought Tom Burke was very, very good too. Makes his mark as a highly capable, tough and persistent character who has a conscience. And he plays Furiosa's running mate known as Praetorian Jack. So quite a dystopian worldview inherent in Mad Max, been spectacularly realised anew. And bravo to George Miller for making it so. It deserves to do well. It's going to have to take a lot of money at the box office to make up for what it cost. I hope it can do so because it's a powerful movie. What did you think of it, Peter Krause?
I was not as impressed with the film as you were. And I think what this film has done as a prequel to the 2015 Mad Max film is that it has lost sight of the origin story, of the meaning behind what Mad Max as a future dystopian society is all about, where people are battling for energy, for food, for water, for survival in a situation where people can't trust anyone else. So the problem with this film is that, yes, it is a spectacular, well-made film. It is beautifully shot around outback New South Wales. It has a lot of key elements in it. It's a lot of action, a lot of stunt work. However, the story is empty. I thought there was really nothing much in terms of story development that happened in the screenplay. And for me, that means a great deal, because if you don't have a strong enough story and screenplay, no matter how much money you throw at a film, the special effects and stunt work and so on are not going to mean a great deal. So, and I must admit, I loved Anya Taylor Joy. She was great as the potential Charlize Theron character, I suppose, in the 2015 Mad Max. But Tom Burke as Pretorius, who was sort of the Mad Max type character, was pretty weak. And
really, why? I'm surprised you say that. I thought he was very strong.
No, I felt there was not much to his story, his character, and the way he interacted with Anya Taylor Joy's character. Look, overall, great film to look at. IMAX, I agree, is a great place to see it. But if you're looking for a good, strong story that really gets into the Mad Max Saga in more detail, then you'll be very disappointed.
Wow. Okay. Greg, did you think more of it than I did? Or than Peter did, rather?
I probably think more of it than Peter did. But I quite liked this for a while, but it took a while to get started. But once the action starts, the pace is quite fast and furious there. However, I thought some of those scenes set during the highway pursuit there with the white war boys and the motorcycles that attacking the truck there, I thought some of the action beats here mimicked the action of Fury Road, which for me was one of the great action films of the last decade. Some of the violence I thought too was a little bit unpleasant, unnecessarily sadistic in nature, and I thought the 148-minute running time is a little bit too generous. This is the longest film in the series, and it could have been cut by about 20 minutes, I think. But I agree that Anya Taylor Joy is convincing here, and she acquits herself well in a very physical role. She doesn't have a lot to say, but boy, does she do a lot. I thought Hemsworth played the villainous Dementors with a broad Ocker accent, a lot of bluster, and a loony messianic charm that comes across as more comical than menacing there. I think that Burke did have a strong presence as Praetorian Jack, but his presence reminds us of those earlier incarnations of the character of Mad Max there. But there's some superbly staged action sequences here. The special effects and stunt work are truly spectacular. And unlike a lot of today's blockbuster action movies with their multi-million-dollar budgets and overdose of CGI effects, Miller prefers to use special effects where possible, and I think this makes for a more spectacular movie. Some highlights there. A film was well shot around Braddon Hill. The red sands, deserts, and that provide the perfect setting for this wasteland. And the cinematographer, Simon Duggan, has done a superb job of bathing the film in a bleak orange hue there. I agree that it needs to be seen on the biggest screen possible with full sound and everything to appreciate Miller's vision to best benefit.
Okay. Well, Jackie, have you seen the big blockbuster or not?
Yes, I saw it, and I saw it at IMAX.
Did you like that setting for it?
Well, I'm absolutely, totally agreeing. It's the place to see it because it is all about bigness, in the action and the spectacle and the clanking and the sound and the noise and the weaponry and the landscapes and all of that. Everything's big. I think of the three of you, Peter, absolutely hear to what Peter had to say. I totally agree with everything he said. And as for what you said, Alex, yes, it looks good, but, good looks can be only skin deep. And to me, there wasn't much under the skin with this. And some of the finer detail of it didn't work for me. I found, I think it was, as Greg said, some of the undercurrents and the torture and the nastiness and there was kind of this threat against Furiosa the whole time. Being a young girl at the age of 10, this kind of undercurrent of potential sexual violence against her, which I found disturbing and didn't fit with what this film was about, which was, big boy clunking machines and fighting, which is the essence of the film, really. I don't know if you felt that, but
I see where
I was uncomfortable with.
Well, I see what you're alluding to, but it's kind of like that supercilious way that Chris Hemsworth's character had to basically say you'll be okay, then locked her up in the cage, etc. But I thought they backed away from what was pretty nasty as a concept that you've just alluded to. I thought they deliberately backed away from that.
You're saying they backed away, but then they actually presented it before they backed away. So the idea was still there. I didn't like that. I found, you said Chris Hemsworth's character was kind of really weird. They all had the Aussie accents, and his was very pronounced, except, of course, when Furiosa finally spoke, and somehow she came out with an American accent. I mean, where did that come from? Was she watching too much TV or something? Because that was way wrong when everybody else had the Australian accents. But Chris Hemsworth, or Dementis, kind of comic book character with the cape and the teddy and the motorbike chariot, the three motorbikes as a chariot, that was all kind of cartoon comic book. But it was a different tone from where the rest of the film was. It was really odd. And Chris Hemsworth, I'll go to a film to watch him. Oh, no, I'll go to a film to look at him. And you were talking about good looks of the film. I'll go to a film to watch Chris Hemsworth. But I would never say he's a great actor or necessarily even a good actor. He's very wooden. I don't know. Did you think he acted well?
Well, look, I thought he played a cartoon role, and I thought he played the cartoon role as it was.
Did he act well? He was wooden.
But hang on. Chris Hemsworth, look, wait a sec. When you say he's wooden, I don't think he's wooden in every movie. So I think he had a role to play, and he played the role. He hammed up the role. I mean, I thought, and perhaps that was what was called upon for him to do. So he sort of...
I thought he looked uncomfortable and strange.
Really? No.
I'm still happy to look at him. I'm happy to look at him.
I'm not. Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, it's
even the humour that he was asked to deliver in the film. Even his humour was odd. It was kind of not funny. It was sort of childish kind of humour. And here he is supposed to be leading these massive armies across the desert and everything, and he's doing silly things and playing with a teddy bear.
Well, again, that was a nod to his past. I mean, one of the things that we should be saying here, and it's interesting you said, he's still good to look at. One of the things I made a point of saying was that his opposite number, the star of the show, Furiosa, in terms of Anya Taylor Joy, she's also good to look at, but she's also a fine actor. And I don't think differently about Chris Hemsworth. I think he's done particularly well in some of the roles that he's played. He's done a very, very good job in. And I just thought he had as I said before, he's got.
Well, there you go, Alex. You used the word. He's done a good job. That's not fine acting to say someone did a good job.
Well, okay. I mean, if you're mainly going to be playing cartoonish characters or, Marvel superheroes or whatever you do, I suppose that there are different representations of that.
Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man like that, and he acted in a very fine fashion.
Yeah, well, that's difference. It's funny. I had Robert Downey Jr. at the tip of my tongue because he's better at it than almost anybody that I can think of, right? So it shows you it can be done. Well, but what I'm asking is, if you go to other characters, Chris Pratt and whatever, do they do a better job than Chris Hemsworth? Is what I'm asking.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, really? Okay, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, look, I'm going to give this the high mark without any question of doubt. Peter's going to give it the low mark. So let's start with you, Peter. Furiosa, right? Are you going to unleash your fury on a Mad Max Saga?
I certainly will.
Oh,
well, Although what I will say is there was a lot of employment for Australian actors in the film. I recognised quite a few of them, so it's good that they got work. A good spectacle, but not a good screenplay.
Hang on, let me try and guess. I'm going to give you. Have you given it the score yet, or have I overspoken?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I reckon you're going to give it about between a 5 and a 6.
Yeah, I gave it 6 out of 10.
There you go. All right. Now, second, I reckon Jackie will be next cab off the rank, and I reckon you're around about the same mark, around the 5 mark. Where are you, Jackie?
I know I did give Furiosa Mad Max Saga a 6 out of 10, but part of that is, I've criticised, I've given my critical comments about the film and only briefly mentioned the things I did like, because I think you and Greg covered that quite well. I think there's a lot that a lot of people will enjoy about it. So I'm not denying that it will appeal, and also here on the employment of Australians in the industry.
Was it too long, Jackie?
Yes, it was, but I was still entertained for most of the film quite well. So I didn't really have a problem with the very much so. Very much so.
2 hours, 20 minutes.
I didn't feel that as Peter already covered this, I thought it was back and forth quite a lot, and it didn't advance the narrative. It wasn't progressive to yes. And that's where boredom sort of does come in, when you're not seeing a big advance through the narrative.
You're basically going from fight to fight, right? That's that's kind of what it's all about in the endeavour for Furiosa to get home. Now, let me see, Greg. I reckon that you'll probably give it somewhere between a 6 and a 6.5-ish. Go on. What are you going to give it?
7. But as I said, the original Fury Road was one of the best action films of the last decade or so. This one had a lot to live up to, and it didn't quite make it. But I'll still give it a 7, because some of the action sequences are quite spectacular.
All right. So what am I going to give it, Greg?
About 9.
8. There we go. So we range from 6 to 8. Average, what your mark is, 7. So it makes it a decent film to go along and see. And
no, it's not an average, because there were 2 on 6. 1 on 7 and 1 on 8.
Hang on.
Where's your maths?
2 on 6, yes. Hang on.
Dear.
Hang on.
12, 19, 20, 27. 4 is 6.
What? No,
it's not 6.
No, it's closer to 6.
It's 6 point something.
Hang on, you said 27, Greg. 28 would be 7. So Jackie's, golly, you're being nitpicky, aren't you? Eh? We don't have 6 3/4.
That's my middle name.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, golly. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, you're on JAir 88 FM, and please subscribe to all this nonsense. No, subscribe to the station. $54 for the year. Go to j-air.com.au and you can hear more about Jackie's nitpicking, which is fantastic, and Peter Krause's recalcitrance, and the fact that Greg's team, St Kilda, doesn't know how to fight itself out of a wet paper bag, Greg, do they? Sorry? Silence? We're doing sounds of silence, are we? Okay, we're doing that. Fair enough. We are now.
I'm not pointing. I'm not pointing today, Alex.
Oh, I'm very disappointed in you, Greg. In fact, I think you're still supporting your team by going to the football, which I greatly admire. So maybe you need to sort of parlay a few of the apes that are in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes so that you become a little bit more battle-hardened, Greg. What do you reckon, eh? That'd be all right. Let's talk about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, M-rated, 145 minutes. Again, a lot of monkey business here, and it does 2 hours, 25 minutes. Does it need to be 2 hours and 25 minutes, Gregory King?
Not many movies need to be that long.
Thank you. I say that. Now, this is the bugbear of mine. Okay, so you keep on rabbiting on about, a movie is, and so forth, determined by how good or bad it is. Does 2 hours and 45 minutes justify Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Peter Krause?
No, it doesn't. In fact, when I had completed seeing the film, my response was, this film has one ape too many.
Ooh, okay. So maybe we need to rate movies based on Apes score. So, look, this is another reboot, reset, reconfiguration. 1968 movie, Planet of the Apes, Charlton Heston. Well, thank you very much. Bless you. Charlton Heston.
I must be allergic to apes.
Yeah, exactly. Roddy McDowell. Has there been a better than the original? Yes, no? What's the collective thinking about that? No. All right. Well, this is the 10th picture in the franchise, so 10 green bottles. Does it live up to expectations? Well, I reckon yes and no. It takes place several generations after the great ape Caesar passed away, and he was the one who oversaw these simians and mankind living in harmony. But, well, what can we say? Things have gone backwards since. And you've got a young ape who knows nothing about the outside world called Noah, played by Owen Teague. He knows nothing about the outside world, nor does he know anything about Caesar. He lives in a rather busy clan, and this particular clan takes joy in singing to and training eagles, yes, eagles, to fish for them. So the group's rite of passage begins when young'uns are tasked with securing eagle eggs high up in the mountains and then nurturing them. And that's the starting point for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So you've got an imminent coming-of-age ceremony for Noah, and that's upset by the arrival of a human female called May, played by Freya Allen. And that results in Noah undertaking this grand and dangerous adventure. So in that guise, he encounters a wise old ape called Raka, played by Peter McCon, who's an orangutan. And he actually does remember Caesar's teachings of decency and morality, and he preaches tolerance and peace. That's Raka. So his adversary, Noah's adversary, is a powerful, very powerful, imposing creature, beast called a gorilla named Silver, played by Eka Darvel, who heads an adversarial ape army. And that army's beholden to the narcissistic Proximus Caesar, Kevin Durant, who craves technological knowledge, and that's what May actually has, the human being, and hence his quest to capture her. So Silver, well, will stop at nothing. This is the adversary, Noah's adversary, to track down May, and that involves raiding and torching other clans, including Noah's one. And when his family and friends are captured, Noah is determined to fight back. Now, at the same time, he's got a decidedly uneasy relationship with the whip-smart human May, and he's trying to figure out whether he can trust her. And also in the picture is a human captive called Trevathan, and that's a role filled by William H. Macy, who accepts the new status quo, right, where apes rule, and teaches the primates history. So it's been written by Josh Friedman, who did Avatar: The Way of Wonder, Wes Ball, who did The Maze Runner, and so Wes Ball also directs Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's a good looker. Visuals are impressive. The cinematographer, Gyula Paydos, who did Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, I thought it's done a pretty good job here. And the sound design adds to the gravitas in the film. I kind of enjoyed that tentative dance between May and Noah, the human and the ape, young ape, which carried on throughout the film. And they, of course, continued to figuratively feel each other out. So Noah gains insights as the story does take shape. May appears to want to re-establish human control. Or does she? Well, there's a mysterious quality to Freya Allen's representation of the human May. And I thought that Silver, quite a mighty force to be reckoned with as one of the villains in the piece, and Eka Darvel in costume, well, I reckon positively fearful. You wouldn't want to meet Silver anytime soon. I also appreciated, by contrast to this, the representation of Raka by Peter McCon. But again, very dragged out, 2 hours, 25 minutes, as mentioned, too long. If it had been tightened, it would have had greater impact. And, well, not much surprise here. It sets up for film number 11. So, yeah, another sequel is on the cards if this can bring home the bacon and make enough money. Did you or did you not enjoy Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Gregory King?
Up to a point, I did, yes. I thought some of the special effects were fantastic here. And special effects have certainly come a long way since the 1968 original. And a combination of CGI and motion capture has worked well. But unlike when Caesar was one of the characters there, I didn't really feel emotionally connected to these apes at all there. The film does pay homage to the 1968 original, though, with a couple of scenes that are reminiscent of that film, especially that one where the apes on horseback are chasing a human through a field, which I thought recaptured some of the original. I also thought this was headed, at one stage, this was headed down the path similar to 1970s Beyond the Planet of the Apes, but thankfully the writers that you've mentioned there go in a slightly different direction there, but it certainly does set the way for a sequel. I thought the action scenes were handled in quite muscular fashion, but they're also a little bit bombastic and go over the top there. The production design was spectacular, especially of the fortress there for the Proximus. And some of the action scenes were quite well. You wouldn't know this was shot in Sydney
No.
in Moore Park because it looks fantastic and otherworldly. Some of it was shot apparently in the Blue Mountains. But they've used green screen effects to recreate this otherworldly look there, and there's some great production design there. I thought Owen Teague did a good job as Noah there, but William H. Macy was wasted. I thought he wasn't given much to do. But yeah, no, look, it's interesting, but again, 140 minutes, way too long for what it has to do, unnecessarily bloated. And again, it takes its time to get started, but it certainly does set up the scene for another sequel.
Yeah, it does. Okay, Jackie, have you gone ape?
I did not go ape over this film. It didn't really appeal to me at all. The looks, again, what Greg says, it looked good. The production was good. The CGI is great, but, no better than the previous one was. I just got so bored with this. I love the opening sequences of raiding the birds' nests for eggs and the reason for doing so. But the story just didn't grab me, and the characters, I just really couldn't care less about any of them. So I very quickly lost interest at about the 90-minute mark, which is about as long as it should have run.
Okay.
That character played by Peter Macon, the wise old orangutan there, he reminded me a little bit of Maurice Evans' character, Dr. Yaius, from the first one.
Well, so Jackie, I think I admire what you've just said then. Basically, as long as you believe a movie needs to last, that's as long as you stay. And then at that point you walk out. So if you thought that Mad Max was only worthy of sort of, let's say, 35 minutes, then you could walk out then. Is that what you're saying? There's a new one.
Absolutely not. I simply said that off the top of my head in relation to this particular film.
No, but I actually think you've bottled something rather special.
I don't. I'm going to go. I'm denying that completely, Alex. And I'll give you a good reason why. Yesterday, I went to see. I'm catching up on my films. You see, following my long absence. For example, The Road to Patagonia, which absolutely thrilled me, having been very close to there. Yesterday I went to see Radical, which is the Mexican film in Spanish about a teacher who engages with students. And that, again, was 15 minutes too long. But some of the best parts of the film were in the last 10 minutes. And there's no way I would have walked out on that or seen that as being, okay, that's a cut-off, that's long enough, I'm done. So absolutely, I said it about this film, Planet of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, but I wouldn't say it in general.
I think I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek here. It's an assessment.
But I wouldn't like you to get away with it, Alex.
Oh, golly, I get away with nothing, Peter, especially from recalcitrants like Jackie and your good self. Did you find anything to scratch yourself about here?
No, I was looking for a bit of monkey business, and I just remembered the 1952 Howard Hawks film, which was much more entertaining. Anyway, and Jackie, I agree with you. Radical is a terrific movie. Anyway, Greg, your comment that the film was bloated is one of my top words for this film, because a script editor was definitely needed for this Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes film. The first half hour of the film just leads nowhere. It just tries to establish character but doesn't do much at all. And by the time we get to some nitty-gritty aspects of the story, it's not terribly interesting story, because it's just revolving around the typical apes versus humans sort of trajectory, which I find quite tiresome unless they can find a way of dealing with that in a more creative and interesting sort of way, especially if we're talking about different battles and approaches by two adversaries. So overall, yes, the special effects are great. The CGI, the motion capture, everything beautifully done. It's just a shame that it's such a hollow and bloated story. I was very disappointed.
Well, okay, so we're going to go scores here, starting with Peter, who is again the disappointment capital of the kingdom. So we're going to say that I don't know whether you're going to pass this one, Peter. So let's say maybe a 4 or 5. Where are we? The kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
The disappointment of the kingdom. I love it. I wear that. Okay, I give it 5 out of 10.
See? Okay, I was right there. Jacqueline, and who saw 90 minutes of it, what would you give that 90-minute score? I'll also say about a 4. Go on.
Well, actually, I've just snuck under Peter there with a 4.5 because I did want to fail it, but I don't want to be too mean.
Hang on, it's still a fail. Is a 4.5 a fail?
4.5 is a fail.
Okay,
What?
great.
Yeah.
But there's an average again. There's an average of nearly 5, isn't there, Jackie? 4 3/4.
So far, we're at 4 3/4. Yeah.
Okay, Gregory King is going to pass this one. I reckon
I'm going to do it 6.5.
Hang on, I was going to say 6. You spoilt my fun again. So
That's my role in life.
it is. So what am I going to give it, Greg?
He's probably going to give it about an 8.
No, I'm not going to be that generous. I reckon.
Okay, 7.5.
Yeah, I reckon it's worth about a 7. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So, okay, what's the average, Jackie? It passes, correct?
Well, was Greg a 6 or a 6.5?
No. Well, we're out to confuse
What was Greg's score? 6 or 6.5?
6 to 6.5, yeah.
6 1/4. He's given it, Jackie. So 6 1/4. So we've got an 8. Do you want to sort of add that up with your, get along to your little?
It comes to 5.6875. Which is a pass, but I know just.
This may.
Welcome to the first on film and mathematics.
Do you want to start a podcast on mathematics, Jacqueline? You've come back from the bush. No, you've come back from the natives and
The jungle, the Amazon jungle.
Oh, the Amazon. I'd forgotten what it was called. Yes, exactly. Oh, golly. So go along.
Make it geography as well, then.
We could. Yes, good. Rootless Cosmopolitans, folks. Monstrous Theatres put it on at Chapel Off Chapel. And I thought it was a very interesting story because Ron Elisha has managed to sort of take a story that could have been very, very heavy, and there's lots of smiles and laughter and so forth within it. But it's still, rather compelling, and it talks about, in terms of a person who's at the top of an organisation using their power in terms of board members and whatever to if you like, flex their muscles. That's one of the themes. I'm deliberately trying not to spoil a surprise for anybody, but it's a very interesting piece of theatre and well worth looking at. So go along and see it, Rootless Cosmopolitans, if you get the chance in the next week. We've been promoting it heavily and given Ron the chance to do so likewise, and it raises some important issues. Beyond that, thank you, one and all, and we'll do it all again very soon. First on film and entertainment. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Peter Krause.